On today's show, it's the unofficial start to the hockey season.
Lots has changed in the Ottawa Senators organization. A lot of players leaving town, but don't worry, we've got a complete depth chart of all the changes.
Can't wait to show you that and discuss what you may have missed over the offseason. That's all coming up on today's Locked On Sens.
I'm Jake Sanderson.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Your Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome. You are locked on to the Ottawa Senators, the only daily podcast covering the Sens. On the outskirts of enemy territory, I'm Ross Levitan, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. You can find us everywhere you get podcasts. We're free and available on YouTube. We're on social media at Sens Central on Twitter and lockedon.senators on Instagram. Today is Monday, September 9th, and Pilsy, the rookies are reporting to camp tomorrow. We've got a game this Friday and Saturday. What a time to be alive.
Yep, it's exciting as the calendar inches closer, Ross. We are inching closer to our podcast calendar as well. You and I are nailing out all the times to get our Locked On Senators podcast organizational value rankings out as well. That's always a good sign that the season is around the corner, and we're working on what Sens media personalities we want to have the week leading up to the season. So it's all coming together here.
Oh, can't wait. But a lot of people, and rightfully so, they kind of disconnect for the summer, whether they're going to their cottage or just busy with kids at home, whatever the case may be. Maybe you just don't like the offseason. You want the puck to drop and to figure out everything from that moment forward. Well, we put up that poll last week, Pilsy, asking, when do you lock in for the season? Lots love it, 24/7, 365. Have to admit, hand up, that's where I voted. But some people said rookie tournament. Some people say training camp when preseason game starts, or the regular season. So we thought this was a good opportunity to look at the Sens depth chart. We've organized it all, coded it so that all the red players are those who are brought in under Steve Staios. You can kind of see the wave coming across now as he's made his mark nearly a year into his tenure. But with that, a lot of players were gone. And these were players that were high up our organizational value rankings last year, Pilsy. And it starts with number 6 on our list, number 6 in the program as well, Jakob Chychrun, one of 2 top 10 players from before last season who have moved on since. Vladimir Tarasenko, we had at 9 last year.
Ross, when Jakob Chychrun was acquired, I don't think either of us would have thought that he would be on the exit list this early. He still has 1 year left on that deal from when the Senators brought him over at what, $4.6 million, I think. And it's crazy as Sens fans, you're looking at Chychrun's season and there was a lot of disappointment, a lot of kind of ups and downs, but he matched a career high in points with 41 points. Now, the problem is, Ross, the last time he had 41 points was in 56 games, and he was a -6, not a -30. So sure, he was still putting the points up, but he was not doing a consistently good job of keeping the puck out of the net too, which is one of the reasons why we were excited the Sens got Jakob Chychrun. We thought his defensive ability was going to be a huge factor too. That was not the case, and here we are talking about Chychrun exiting the Sens and heading to the Washington Capitals.
Traded in exchange for a 3rd-round pick and Nick Jensen, who we'll get to later in this show. Tarasenko moved on at the deadline, got his Stanley Cup. Congratulations. Seemingly a great guy, great family. Talk about guys who couldn't keep the puck out of their net. Number 12 on our list last year, going into the season with some excitement and maybe some dumbfounded hope for Joonas Korpisalo. He's gone. Thankfully, he's in Boston now. Dominik Kubalik just signed last week in Switzerland. He's gone. And Erik Brandstrom was simply not qualified. He is signed in Colorado. So those are and then Matthew Joseph right there as well. And Mark Kastlik. We're all in our top 20. We're all NHLers throughout last season. When you look at that group overall, the forwards, Kastlik, Kubalik, Tarasenko, the defensemen, Brandstrom and Chychrun, and in goal with Korpisalo, how would you I was going to say magnetize, but that's a different word. What is the magnitude of losing those players?
Like as far as the Sens team or just in general?
as an organization, losing all those pieces, how important?
Honestly, I would probably say losing Tarasenko might be the most important because he was the puzzle piece that completed the top six. And we saw at the last half of the season, they could not find a sixth guy for the top six to save their lives. And it kind of ruined the rest of the forward roster. And he was a player that actually fit in well with this team. And he was clicking. Like, Ross, when Tarasenko was playing with the Sens, in 57 games, he had 17 goals, 24 assists, 41 points in 57 games was pretty impressive. And this coming off a season where he only put up 50 points total with St. Louis and New York before, and then in 57 games he gets 41 points in Ottawa. So clearly it was a match that was working. It's just the trajectory of where the Ottawa Senators were going did not meet Vladimir Tarasenko's expectations, which is fair. And he said, nah, I want to go to Florida, and he wins the Stanley Cup, like you mentioned. So I would say that's honestly probably the biggest loss. I think people would want the answer to be Chychrun, but Chychrun was a puzzle piece that just did not fit at all in any way, shape, or form with this team. So he had to be moved on from, regardless of if people think the trade return was underwhelming. I mean, the trade return for both these guys was underwhelming, but certain circumstances causes Steve Staios to say, we need to move on from these guys.
What I'd say about this group as a whole, outside of Tarasenko, is they were wildly inconsistent. They all had moments where you're like, oh, I see something there. But then a lot of moments where you're just kind of scratching your head, wondering why you thought that in the first place. Because there were some games where Matthew Joseph would go a month and a half without scoring a goal. And there were just times where you'd rather the highs be a little bit lower if you could avoid those lulls, those inconsistencies that were plaguing the Ottawa Senators last year. They also made a number of American Hockey League moves. We don't have to dive too deep into it, but Igor Sokolov was sent to Utah. Roby Yarventi was sent to the Edmonton Oilers in a prospect exchange. You had Lassie Thompson going to Europe. Now, the Senators, though, do still hold his rights as an RFA, so we did keep him in our mind for this, but ultimately decided to leave him off. Yuri Smeykal, Parker Kelly, I guess another NHLer that wasn't qualified, but again, a very limited role at the NHL level. Kevin Mandolese, Dylan Hetherington, the captain of the Belleville Senators, Jacob Larson, and then a couple cult favorites, I'll call them, because Rourke Chartier certainly had a bit of a fan club in Ottawa, played a lot of games during the Shane Pinto suspension. Boko Imama and Josh Curry all gone from the organization. That's more expected though, right, Pillsy, getting the turnover at the AHL level?
Yeah, certainly a lot of movement in the AHL as well. And I was a little surprised they moved on from Rourke Chartier. I thought that was going to be a defensive fourth line center / AHL guy that they could use. Parker Kelly, I think it was good for him to get a new start as well. Very similar to Mark Kastelik in that sense. And then you look at Roby Yarventi. That was a bit of a surprising deal, Ross, because I thought there was still a lot left to give for Yarventi, but with injury trouble, maybe that's one Steve Staios looks at and is like, hey, the value of this guy is still somewhat high. Let's try to get a return here before it's kind of sunk costs. And then tough, bittersweet, but seeing Igor Sokolov move on, you get Jan Jenik, Steve Staios' guy, in return. A very fair trade for both teams. And again, Igor, he had given his heart and soul to this organization, especially when you look at what he's done in Belleville. And it just seemed like he was kind of stuck. There was a cap to his ceiling in this organization. So he's going to get a fresh start in a brand new organization in Utah. So we love that for him. But this is the kind of movement, Ross, where you look at a team coming in with new owner, new management, and new coaching staff. You can expect this type of turnover, and the new group has done a good job of cleaning out what they thought was old problems and bringing in new guys to start getting their fingerprints in the new process started here.
Who are those guys? Let's meet them next. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. Well, now we're going to do something a little different with FanDuel. Now, through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 on FanDuel and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, and you can look at odds, and you know that we're all over the Bears. Don't tell Pillsy about his Bengals. It's okay, buddy. You'll bounce back, but it's a great thing to have football back, and we're enjoying it on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're looking for a place in Ottawa to watch the big games, how about the GLEBE Central Pub? The GLEBE Central Pub's been a longtime sponsor of Locked On Senators, and we got to let you know that heading to 779 Bank Street is always the play. Whether you're going to watch some NFL football, whether you're going for trivia night, or just for a great time with friends, you're always around good vibes at the GCP. A lot of people say the vibes are free at the GCP, and the shuttle is coming back. So stay tuned for more information on that. The GLEBE Central Pub Sens shuttle is coming back soon. Hope you had a good summer, but it's time to get the wheels turning on the bus. It's always a great vibe heading down to the GLEBE Central Pub, getting that buffalo chicken wrap, getting those wings, getting some pints into you, whether it's chocolate milk like our guy Kevin Hemina does, or whatever you like to get into you. It's all good at the GLEBE Central Pub. So go visit them at 779 Bank Street, steps away from Lansdowne, and go enjoy the GLEBE Central Pub. All right, Pillsy. So we've talked about the dearly departed, those who are no longer with the Ottawa Senators organization. We hereby knight you, #Sens Abroad from here on out. But who was brought in, Pillsy? Let's start with the first and the most important move. We got a goalie.
Yeah, and I mean, talk about a flair for the dramatics. Steve Staios pulling the trigger on the trade moments before puck drop of Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals. So even though Ottawa Senators fans were months away from seeing their team play hockey, we all felt like winners in that moment. So that was great. And I've decided, Ross, I am not concerned about the contract. I'm not concerned there's only 1 year left, because simply the fact getting out of Korpisalo's contract and only having to eat $1 million of that for the remainder is a win in and of itself, in my opinion. And I get scared thinking about what the Ottawa Senators would have done with that 25th overall pick anyways. So it all worked out, if you ask me.
And not only that, but you're bringing in a guy from an organization that just bleeds excellence. He just has that high standard, not only of the team in front of him, but of himself. Yep. If you heard him last week, he was talking to some of the media at the CTC, and he was asked, what are your expectations for yourself this year? And it was a one-word answer: high. This guy's going to expect a lot of himself. And of all the swings the Senators have taken in goal, from Matt Murray to Joonas Korpisalo, Cam Talbot, and the list goes on, you're really getting the best resume and a guy who is in the prime of his career at 30 years old. So Ullmark changes the perception of this team league-wide when you look at goaltending being the most important position. When you look at the teams around Ottawa, the Buffaloes, the Detroits, you can keep going down the list, but those two divisional teams, the most important. And their fans would tell you the same thing. Like Ullmark or Ville Husso, Ullmark or Cam Talbot, Ullmark or Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. Decent goalie, but like, we're talking about one of the top 10 goalies in the National Hockey League. So that can't go without staying right off the top. However, I will say, at times the defensive structure of this team was a gong show in front of whoever the goalie was. That's where Nick Jensen comes in. What do you expect Nick Jensen to come back from the Chychrun trade? What's he going to provide on the ice for the Sens?
One word: stability, I hope. That's all. Really, that's no stability in brackets. I hope. Well, yeah, actually, a period would be better there. Yeah, I'll take that period. Because really, and I forget which of our Sens Central citizens, maybe it was Rob, was talking about really all Nick Jensen needs to do is quietly be effective out there. Like, if he turns into the Dylan DeMello, where you're like, oh, I don't really think I noticed much from him in this game. Perfect. Sign me up, because Chychrun, you notice too much for good and bad. He had that cannon on the power play. He had the shot, but then defensively, it was just a mess. So if you're going to have a Nick Jensen that is a veteran guy that is a right shot defenseman playing on the right side, you'll love to see that, and can help Thomas Chabot, and at least I'm assuming he's going to play with Thomas Chabot as that second pair. If that second pair can have success and provide stability in between the first pair, which is an elite shutdown pair of Sanderson Zub, and then the third pair, which is likely going to be Tyler Clevin and Jacob Bernard Docker, a very young, inexperienced pair. If that second pair can be the stable kind of, they don't swing the needle too far one way, they're not too high, they're not too low, I think that's going to provide a lot of value to this team. And hopefully that's the Nick Jensen we get to see.
Little sneaky upside on him, not this past year, but the year before. 29 points, 5 goals in each of his 2 full seasons after the pandemic for the Washington Capitals. He was a plus 32 3 years ago, minus 9 last year. Obviously, Washington relied on Charlie Lindgren to get them into the playoffs, but I do think he's got some decent hockey left. He will be 34 September 21st, so at the start of this season. However, you're just wanting him to be that good first pass out of the zone, that steady Eddie, little Chris Phillips game tape, basically. Like, just pucks in good spots for your partner and play steady in your own end. And I think Sens fans will warm up to Nick Jensen, who seems like, again, just work boots, and that's been a theme for the Ottawa Senators. He did not win the cup, by the way, with Washington. He was traded there from Detroit midway through the following season. But the other 2 guys they brought in have Stanley Cups on their resume. Michael Amadio winning it with the Vegas Golden Knights in 2023, and David Perron in 2019. They're both shorter term deals, 2 years for Perron, 3 years for Amadio. That was a big thing for me on free agency day, because you always see these outrageous term contracts that end up getting bought out. What is your opinion on how those 2 players will fit in up front?
Well, and not a free agent addition, but adding another Stanley Cup champion and Nick Cousins a little later on.
Free agent addition, though, but just later.
I didn't mean on like early free agent days.
Frenzy.
Yes, during the frenzy. I like the Amadio signing. I think they probably had to give him a little bit more and maybe 1 year more than they would have wanted to secure him. But I think he's a good utility player that you need in times of injury. Like, essentially, he's going to be the Matthew Joseph with less speed, right? Because Joseph was the guy you were supposed to be able to plug up and down your lineup, but it just didn't necessarily work the way everyone would have hoped. And then David Perron, they're hoping can bring some sort of point scoring similar to Tarasenko while adding a gritty veteran edge to his game. And then
great board play. I think for Perron, it's how he's going to extend offensive zone possession that Ottawa had not done enough consistently after Brady was off the ice in the past.
Yeah, and just leading by example. Like, look, if the veteran guy in his mid-30s is willing to dig in for those board battles, rookies and younger guys, you got no excuse. So I think that'll be good as well. And then Noah Gregor, I think, provides a different look on that fourth line. I feel like the Sens' fourth line for years was just Casty, Kelly, and some other guy, which is okay, but it didn't have that gritty physical oomph that they had hoped. So you get Gregor, a little smaller, faster, more defensively minded, and then likely he's going to be paired with Nick Cousins and another guy. So you mix that up a little bit. So I think that's going to be a nice addition as well. And you really start to see the way that Steve Stais is designing this team different than Pierre Dorion would have. Because Ross, if Pierre Dorion's at the helm of this offseason, you're probably looking at one of those right-hand shot defensemen that got paid way too much money for way too much term, like your Brandon Montours.
Matt Roy.
Yeah, Matt Roy. Who's the guy that went to the Leafs?
Joel Edmondson in LA got $3+ million on a big term. Kristanev.
Yeah, I forgot about him. He's so unforgettable. We weren't
just
even really
like Craig
interested.
Berube.
Yeah, we weren't interested in those guys at all. But that, and Steve Stais even said that. He's like, look, we were thinking about those guys, but it just got silly how much money they were making and for how long. So it's the old saying, Ross, sometimes the best deals in free agency are the deals you don't make. And I think you can look at Stais and there's not glaring deals where you're like, oh man, how are we going to get out of this one? Which I was feeling that way when they signed Korpisalo. I wanted to be positive. I wanted to be hashtag goalie friendly show. They got their goalie signed long-term, but it just didn't feel that good. So this is a much better approach in my opinion.
So when you look at it, basically Korpisalo gets replaced for Linus Ullmark. On the back end, Chychrun gets replaced for Nick Jensen. You're looking for Tyler Kleven to step up and play the role that Eric Brandstrom played last year. Up front, you're basically replacing Noah Gregor with Parker Kelly with Noah Gregor. You're replacing Mark Kastelic with Nick Cousins. You're replacing Vladimir Tarasenko with David Perron, and you're replacing Mathieu Joseph with Michael Amadio. And there you have it. You pretty much have, well, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, we'll find out when the puck drops, but we'll show you how it looks on a depth chart. And oh yeah, another big change. A new coach? How's that going to affect everything? We'll discuss next. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day. All right, a reminder that you can advertise with Locked On Senators. If you are interested or want to get the word out about your business, you can shoot us a message. The contact info is on our YouTube page. You can click there or shoot us a DM on Twitter at Sens Central. Okay, Pilsy, so it has been a very busy offseason. So we've taken our list, we've checked it twice, but before I pull it up, how is Travis Green going to play a role in shaping this group?
Ross, I think if you looked at Travis Green compared to DJ Smith, they're very opposite coaches, right? Like, and both of them are former players, which is an interesting wrinkle. But DJ, we've said it, he was always the fun uncle guy. There wasn't really a lot of consequences for young star players making mistakes or anything like that. And not all that can be put on DJ. He didn't exactly have a lot of flexibility or better options. So you got to try to put the best team on the ice as possible. So that's what he was doing. And arguably they kept him around a little bit longer than they should have. Whereas Travis Green is going to be a demanding coach that's going to emphasize physical training and being able to outskate and outwork other teams, and the number one word is the accountability, right? Like, even Ross, it's at a point where even the players are like, we kind of want to be held accountable by a strict principle here. We're done with the substitute teacher. We need someone that's going to put us in check. I think Thomas Chabot literally said that. What he's hoping for is some accountability from coaching staff, putting that on the players. So I think that's going to be good. And then I think they did a really good job with the assistants coaching staff. So obviously keeping Alfie was huge, bringing in Mike Yeo, and then the other guy, Nolan
Baumgartner.
Yes. Yeah. So I think they did a good job surrounding Travis Green with good assistant coaches. And then you're going to have Jacques Martin stay on as, I guess, an advisor is his official title.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think that's good all around. Like the executive part of the Senators is so much more stable now, and it seems like we're more like a normal organization rather than in that group of 5 franchises where just everything is in disarray off the ice. So that is also a refreshing, nice feeling.
If you're watching on YouTube, we've got our depth chart pulled up for the forwards. We'll get to the defensemen and goalies afterwards, but whether you want to call this a lineup or just a depth chart, that's up to you. But I've split it here, and I put Jan Jenik as the 13th forward. I just have a sneaky suspicion that he's going to come in and make an impact in training camp. And we know Stais has a history with him. Maybe I'm just once bitten of a guy who has connections with the organization or the coach or the GM or that, and getting an opportunity. But I truly believe that he's going to bring a little grit and determination to training camp. And that fourth line, man, it looks like it could be set with 2 guys on one-way deals and Noah Gregor and Nick Cousins. I mean, all 3 with Zach McEwen. But we saw last year, Staios wasn't afraid to send McEwen back down to the minors and clear waivers and give guys who are deserving of looks opportunity. There's a few guys who are chomping at the bit. Like, realistically, Pilsy, I see at least 3 guys below the 4th line who should be pushing for jobs. Jan Yannick, Angus Crookshank, and Zach Ostapchuk, I think, will all be itching. And even throw Adam Gaudette. I scored 44 last year in the AHL. I'm sure he's not satisfied either.
Yeah, I would agree. And I mean, if you want to extend that list, Ross, I don't think it's too crazy to think Halliday is at least in the mix. Is he a favorite? No, I wouldn't say that, but at least in the mix. And then,
well,
that's
sneaky Matthew Highmore. He played under Travis Green in Vancouver.
Yeah, that's definitely.
I don't love it, but I think that he's gonna go into camp on a higher line than maybe people will expect, and he'll have to play himself out of it.
And even if we're adding to that extended list, did you mention a Stapchuk? Because I think this Stapchuk could be a guy there as well. So yeah, there's opportunities to be had here if players can prove themselves in camp.
So 4 new NHLers under the Steve Staios regime. You've got also 6 new guys in the minors. That's just up front. Is that about the amount of changeover that you were expecting?
Yeah, I think so. Like look at the NHL roster. Ross Tkachuk not going anywhere despite multiple rumors. Stützle obviously not going anywhere. G not going anywhere. Norris, Batherson, Greg, Pinto, like those guys we knew were going to stay there and they were going to be the core. The other surrounding casts, the Kubaliks, Kellys, Casties, Matthew Josephs, it was very likely that those guys weren't going to stick around. So no, I'm not surprised here.
Do you want to actually no? Let's move on for now. I was going to say, do you want to give me an X factor? But we got a whole show of X factors coming up. Let's get to the decor here. I've added 2 names at the bottom because they've just signed contracts over the summer. Matthew Andonovski and Carter Yakimchuk, the 2 youngsters, have the asterisks because they're signed and they're CHL players. So the agreement stipulates they can come to NHL training camps. No college kids can. No European kids can. Guys who are playing in Europe.
USHL as well, right?
Yeah, I should say guys who are playing in Europe, not European players, obviously. But those 2, if they don't make the NHL, have to go back to junior. So my guess is Yakimchuk gets 2 games, and I think Andonovski gets the game in Toronto and then goes back to Kitchener after that. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I would do at least. Bring him to Toronto. Say, hey, look, you just got named captain in Kitchener. Yep. We're excited for you there. You've made an impact. I'm assuming he's going to have a good rookie camp. And then let him get 1 NHL game. I think that would be a nice feather in the cap of a 5th-round pick. And to be able to do it in front of friends and family, if he does get into that first preseason game on Sunday in Toronto, I think that could be a nice moment. But we've got those 2 as kind of just extra. One's left shot, one's right. I just wanted to explain off the bat why we have those asterisks there between the 2 young guys.
No, I like that. And yeah, get Ando in right away, get him playing in that Sens jersey, and then get him back as the captain of his OHL team, get him back early in time so he can kind of lead Kitchener into the start of their season. And Yakimchuk, you got to give Sens fans what they want. Let us see him, even if it's only 2 games like you're mentioning.
Should note that we are super excited to watch that. We're probably going to live stream the game on Monday, September 16th, the Sens' 3rd rookie tournament game. Stay tuned for more details on that one as they become available. In the NHL, only 1 change on the back end in terms of an addition. We talked about 2 guys leaving, Chychrun and Brandstrom. Is this NHL decor good enough to compete for a playoff spot?
I think so, just because I think Sanderson's going to increase his game even more, if you can believe it. I think JBD is going to find a home as a 3rd pair guy that's going to block shots. Clevin, it's going to be interesting to see how he does in a full season. And then Jensen, we're hoping stabilizes the Shabbat pairing. So I think so, Ross, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they look at 1 more PTO for a veteran defenseman either.
Clevin is the guy who I'm most excited to see. Like, it just feels like he's got the physical maturity. He works his tail off in the gym, and he put up very good results last year in the AHL and started to look a bit more comfortable at the NHL level as the season went on during his 2nd call-up, where we were boots on the ground for a couple of his performances. And I just think that what he needs to really... Here's what I'll say. I will believe that he's a full-time NHLer the first time he catches someone in the trolley tracks. because that's when I know he's going to be confident enough to step up and not worry about playing a little more conservative. Like, I mean, this is not new. This happens with every player when they come up. Just look at the guy who he's next to. JBD was very timid his first time up, just trying to roll off hits and trying not to take huge contact. Brandy the same, but Cleven's got the advantage of being 6'4", being 210, like being that physical presence. So I want him to throw his body around, because if you look at the decor, otherwise Zoop can throw a few hits, but they're not necessarily as physically,
punishing.
They're not the Vegas Golden Knights decor from 2 years ago. That much is for certain.
Definitely, yeah. My only hesitation, Ross, with Cleven is, as a young defenseman, getting that big hit is awesome, but getting that big hit and taking yourself out of the play, not so awesome. So that's going to be tough for him to gauge. He's going to have to start learning. It's a fine line, good physical hit, but keeping yourself in the play, or at least knowing if you're going to go for that hit, your partner, he's going to cover your back. So I think that's going to be a learning experience for Cleven.
It certainly will. Now in goal, I just wanted to see Linus Ullmark again. Ullmark and Forsberg are your NHL goalies. Sogard and Merlainen in the AHL. And what's the name of that youngster they grabbed from the London Knights?
It's escaping me right now. Simpson?
Yeah. Simpson. Yeah. Michael Simpson. There you go. So he signed a one-way AHL contract. So he'll be that third man available if there is some, call-ups or whatever the case may be. Simpson went 15-2 in the playoffs last year in London. So is that good?
Yeah.
Not bad. So overall, Pillsy, you look at all the changes from this roster. Would you say that the Senators are a better team now than they were last year?
The way you worded that is important. I think they are a better team. Not necessarily did they get better players, which is a big factor, because you can have a team of all-stars, but they can't play together as a team. Doesn't matter. I think they found the right pieces to support these main cast of characters here. And I think, honestly, they could have just got Ullmark and then done anything with the remaining pieces, and it would have been an upgrade. So, yeah, I think this team has a much better chance of competing throughout an 82-game season than last year's team.
Let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on the changes that were made for the Ottawa Senators this season. In lieu of final thoughts, Pillsy, I'm just going to tell you, happy birthday to Gabriel Eliasson. He's 18 years old now. He just turned 18.
Wow.
That's unbelievable. And if the roster's out by now, you already know, but we're recording this on Wednesday, September 4th. Little spoiler there at the end of the show. We just fooled everyone. We just time traveled, guys. Gabriel Eliasson will be at Sens rookie tournament. For today, we say goodbye. We'll chat on Wednesday. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been another edition of the Locked On Senators podcast. Your team every day.